Hi, everybody. Analisa Six here with the Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to bring you the October 2024 astrology forecast. Really late. It's already October 12th today, and I am so behind on getting this out. And a big part of it was my just poor time management skills. I had somebody come stay with me for the first week of October and just playing catch up from that. I just have not felt like I had the energy or bandwidth to jump on here and to be totally transparent and vulnerable because I think that astrology is incredibly personal and anecdotal at times. This time last year, I was going through a lot, and it was the last full month that I was married still, in terms of like being in the relationship in a way where I didn't know that my relationship was about to end. And so, one of the things that's been happening to me since October started is kind of just a lot of PTSD stuff where I'm having a lot of memories and kind of like a whiplash kind of thing happen. And I'm such a emotionally sensitive person. I'm also a very nostalgic, sentimental person. Dates are really important to me. There's certain like, those fall kind of vibes that start to come in the air, start to remind me of things that it's just brought up a lot for me during this month so far. And it was kind of like the end of September into this month, it kind of snuck up on me. And so, with that said, it's hard for me sometimes to come on a video when I'm mentally feeling really scattered or discombobulated. And that's been kind of the vibe for me since October started and kind of into October since the end of September. Usually I would have recorded these at the end of September, very beginning of October. And I don't think I realized how much the kind of like PTSD whiplash of everything was going to be affecting my brain so much. So, with that said, it's October 12th, and I am going to try to get through just, a good synopsis of October for all of us, even though we've already um, started the month. Because, if you're watching this in the middle of the month, you can reflect and say, how was the beginning of October for me? Or any of these things super relevant? It'll kind of give you some perspective on why you might have been going through something through October. I feel like a lot of people I know are kind of going through a big transitional transformation period right now. And, I think it's normal because we just entered fall. So, at the end of September, we moved into summer's over. We're in the fall energy now. And, kind of one of the things to think about with the seasons is, fall is representing kind of the beginning of a death. And then when we're in winter, we're kind of in the death. And so I think that it's normal and natural for a lot of us to feel, kind of like we talk about spring cleaning. I think there's another kind of fall cleaning energy that we feel, but it's different. And we think about, the spring equinox is kind of like this rebirth of everything. The flowers are blooming. It's, mating season for a lot of animals. Like everything is kind of starting to come alive. And in fall, we're seeing the opposite. Everything is starting to die off. And so fall can be a really heavy time energetically where we're feeling those things. And, there's a lot of like kind of cheesy like memes and stuff about just looking to the trees for the beauty of, what comes out of the death, like the trees all have these beautiful colors and there's beautiful smells, and we have kind of this vibe in the air that feels good. Fall's always been one of my favorite seasons. And I think that even though I've always really enjoyed it, I can feel kind of this need to go more introverted, introspective, reflective. And, it does feel really heavy and kind of intense. And so, just thinking about October, we're moving towards Halloween and, Samhain, all that kind of Dia de los Muertos, all that kind of energy. And we're feeling it, and I love how much that energy is embraced. Halloween and Dia de los Muertos was my favorite time of year, my favorite holidays growing up, and they still are. And I think that it's an interesting thing to feel so much kind of sadness or death or kind of, the grief kind of that comes with the transitional period, but also to really feel the joy and kind of the fun of celebrating those themes too. I always want to buy Halloween decorations, and then I look around my apartment and I feel like even though I don't think anybody walking into my apartment would feel like it feels like Halloween, but I have skulls everywhere and Dia de los Muertos stuff. I got rid of some of it because I was married on Dia de los Muertos, and so now I have a weird thing with that. Don't get married on holidays. Lesson learned there. But, it's just, I have a lot of like death symbols in my apartment already. So I don't really feel like I need to buy Halloween decor, but I do really want to. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into what we start out October with. I have the chart for the month. Let's see if I can share my screen. I don't know if it shows me. I don't think it does, but you can at least hear me. So here we are, October 1st. So we start out October in Libra season. Happy birthday to all of the October Libras. I have so many of you in my life. Happy birthday to each and every one of you. I'm not going to say you all by name because if I miss anyone, I'll feel terrible. Mercury is also in Libra, and we start out the month with, I think it's the day before. Let's actually make sure. Yeah, it's the day before on the 30th that we have the sun conjunct Mercury, cazimi. Whenever the sun makes a conjunction to a planet, it overpowers that planet. And it's called a cazimi in astrology. It's also known as a combustion when it involves the sun. And so we're still feeling on October 1st that energy of the sun and Mercury making that conjunction. We also have the moon in the mutable earth sign of Virgo. So this is also a really good time to kind of be putting order to things. When the moon's in Virgo, we tend to feel like it's a really important time for us to get our life in order and start kind of chipping away at the to-do list. Think of the Eight of Pentacles in the tarot. Mercury is also the ruler of Virgo. And so with the sun and Mercury conjunct in the cardinal air sign of Libra, we can take a really pragmatic, practical approach to life and kind of see both sides. It's very Libran to see both sides of a situation. And then moon and Virgo, put it into application in a way that feels hopefully more balanced. I definitely wasn't feeling that way at the beginning of the month. And there are some hard aspects between the moon and Jupiter, Chiron. There's a moon trine to Uranus, and there's a moon opposition to Neptune, and a moon trine to Pluto. So we do have some kind of energy that started the month out a little bit more discombobulated than organized, but hopefully the things that make us feel ungrounded kind of pull us back into seeing the perspectives on, how things could be different. I think of the Two of Swords in the tarot, which is moon in Libra, which is where we were later in the day on the 1st, where it's time for us to kind of let go of maybe the way that we've tried to do things before and see some fresh perspectives on it. So that's something to think about. Then we're ingressing towards our solar eclipse as the day progresses. So on Wednesday, the 2nd, we had the solar eclipse happen in the morning at 10 degrees of Libra. And so, solar eclipses, involve the sun and the moon making that conjunction in the sky. And we had just had a lunar eclipse in Pisces before. And so now we're kind of back in this last bit of the Libra Aries axis. And so if we think about what Libra represents, it's the cardinal air sign of the zodiac, and it traditionally rules the 7th house. And the 7th house, let's go ahead and move one day. The 7th house is the house that rules partnerships of all kinds. So this can be romantic partnerships, this can be best friends, this can be business partnerships. Any kind of one-on-one relationship falls in the 7th house. And so, Libra has a lot to do with those themes. Libra also is the energy that kind of has to do with, justice, fairness, equality, and the pursuit of equality. And so, I read something recently in one of my vintage astrology books that I really liked that was about how Libra isn't just about being a peacekeeper. It's also about the pursuit for peace and justice, which isn't always peaceful. And so even though Libra can get a kind of stereotype of being like passive or not conflict oriented, the pursuit for peace and justice is very conflict oriented. And so it's about Libra as a sign is not just about being passive or peaceful or harmonious. It's also about fighting for justice, fighting for peace, and keeping the scales balanced, which is, you know, not a easy thing to do. Fighting for fairness and justice is, you know, usually, you know, very not peaceful. So I thought that was kind of a cool take, and it reminded me of the Three of Swords card in the tarot, which is a card of conflict, and how, you know, in Libra, we're learning how to have healthy conflict that hopefully in the end results in fairness, equality, and peace. So the solar eclipse, you know, eclipses are big, huge kind of breakthrough energies that we are enduring and experiencing some kind of, you know, hopefully pivotal moment in this area of our chart. And so wherever you have 10 degrees of something in your chart, this eclipse was impacting that. I know for me, the solar eclipse was happening within 3 degrees of my midheaven, which is the top part of the chart that represents the axis that rules the 10th house. It's our public life, our career. And that was also making a hard aspect to my Chiron placement in the 7th house. So relationships and career were feeling very heavy to me around the eclipse because of where the eclipse was hitting. And that's very poignant for my life. Like, I know that there's big things and big shifts that need to change over the next few months around my work and how I'm relating to my work and also the people in my life that I'm close with. So that's an example of how it was impacting me. So you can look and see, you know, where it was impacting you to kind of see where your lessons were, whether it was like your ascendant, your identity, sense of self, communication would be like 3rd house, money, finances, 2nd house. You know, it's different for all of us. But those are kind of some things to think about. The other thing that was kind of intense about this eclipse was it wasn't making an exact square to Mars, but, you know, was within a 5-degree kind of influence with Mars. And then that moon, you know, did end up squaring Mars, I think by the next day. Yeah, Thursday at midnight, the moon squared Mars. And I really feel like I felt that square. So I don't know if that's something, you know, maybe other people felt, but, you know, a moon square to Mars can have us just feeling really emotionally unstable and feeling very in like the feelings are very intense. And, you know, Venus is also in Scorpio during this time, making a semi-sextile to this energy. And so relationships and how we process relationships within the subconscious was definitely a theme for this eclipse. We also had the moon making that conjunction to Mercury. So issues around communication and relationships also come up for us during this time. We might be finding different ways to communicate our needs. If we're feeling like we need more balance or fairness in a relationship dynamic, that also comes up for us. And then it also made it in conjunct to Saturn and Pisces. So the way that we structure out our emotions or our feelings, and things can feel very confusing too with these transits. By the 3rd, that moon is continuing to make some aspects. So we had the moon square to Mars, moon trine to Jupiter, moon opposite Chiron, and the moon in conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And then we had Mercury in Libra making an in conjunct to Saturn in Pisces. And, you know, again, like the Mercury in Libra kind of harder aspects to things can definitely have communication feeling not fluid. It can feel kind of stifled in some way. I'm not the biggest fan of Mercury in an air sign outside of Gemini because it's the ruler of Gemini, in the sense that sometimes we can be overly practical or logical about something in a way that disconnects us maybe from something going on underneath, like the subconscious. Like maybe we're kind of more in this passivity or this kind of play along to get along, people pleasing kind of energy with Mercury and Libra. And then it making a harder aspect to Saturn and Pisces, where Pisces has more of a relationship to the subconscious. And Saturn here is really kind of trying to get us to work through things maybe on a deeper level. It brings all of that together. So And in conjuncts, aren't necessarily bad aspects, they can be challenging. I think there's a big benefit to this where it's like that mercurial kind of need to keep things light and, maybe practical. We're actually like experiencing some of that, the heaviness of the Piscean intuitive stuff. And, we're kind of balancing like, how do I acknowledge what's happening underneath while still trying to have this practical communication and noticing that no matter how logical or practical we try to be, it doesn't negate the underneath stuff that's happening. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think my point that I'm trying to make is that sometimes when we have, planets passing through a sign like Libra, we can try to be more passive or more, you know, go with the flow about it. But when we start to bring in some of the heavier feeling aspects with things like Venus and Scorpio, Mars and Cancer, Saturn and Pisces, it's, bringing us into those emotions. So if we can balance all of that stuff out in a very Libran way and see the value in both, we can make a lot of progress. But if we're leaning too much into one area, it can be intense and feel just very discombobulating, which I'm relating more to the intensity of these transits right now, I think. Okay, so October 4th, the moon is going to leave Libra and enter Scorpio after making some more aspects to things. And then we've got Venus in the fixed sign of Scorpio, fixed water sign of Scorpio, making a trine to Saturn in Pisces. So here's more of that kind of intense water energy. So Venus in Scorpio is in its fall or its detriment, I should say. And that's because Venus is the ruler of Taurus and Scorpio is the opposite of Taurus. So Venus and Scorpio is not, it's not its home sign. It's not where it's supposed to be in the sense that it's not the ruler, it's the opposite. And so when we have a planet in the opposite sign, there's a couple different ways that we interpret it. There's a need for integration, essentially, of polarity. So Scorpio being opposite Taurus, Taurus represents life, nature, money, stability, our connection to physical pleasure, our connection to our bodies, the material. And Scorpio, is the underworld, death, sex. It has to do with, I think Taurus and Scorpio both have a relationship to sex in different ways. Like we see the eighth house as Scorpio ruled as the relationship to sex predominantly, but I think that Taurus has a lot to do with physical pleasure. And so Scorpio is kind of like more of like the here's what I like sexually, the kinks, the maybe kind of desires. And then Taurus, I think, is more about the physical part of it, being a fixed earth material sign. So Venus being the planet of relationships, when it's in Scorpio, it can be very sexy and elusive, mysterious, also a desire to connect on a deeper level spiritually. But it can also have this, flavor of mystery, maybe things kind of being more secretive. It also is bringing up things in relationships under the surface that might be uncomfortable. So Venus and Scorpio can bring up issues around jealousy, secrets, infidelity, envy, competition, those types of things. Venus and Scorpio can kind of shine a light on and cause us to experience or feel or have to acknowledge in a relationship dynamic. So trining Saturn and Pisces, some of those things might come up. Venus also has a relationship to art, and Scorpio and Pisces energy is also very artistic, spiritual energy. So Saturn and Pisces and Venus in Scorpio making a trine, this could also be a really positive energy for leaning into music and art. So those are all the different themes that can come up with this transit. On the 5th, we're going to have that moon in Scorpio making some aspects to things. And then we're going to have Mercury in Libra making a square to Mars in Cancer. So kind of before talking about that moon making like a wider square to Mars and then squaring Mars, Mercury in Libra is kind of like a similar theme that we had a few days prior, but it's more our mental capacity than our emotional, more how we're, perceiving things, talking about things, thinking about things. And squaring Mars, it can definitely feel like Mercury retrograde. Anytime there's a hard aspect to, especially a malefic planet like Mars. Malefic meaning, challenging planet. Um, Mars is considered to be malefic in traditional astrology. It feels like all the mercurial themes like technology, communication, travel, all of those things get disrupted in some way and can feel really challenging. And so if we were experiencing some tension mentally, and through communication, and Mars in Cancer has a lot to do with how our feelings are being processed, this transit was really kicking up a lot of dust around that. So that's something that, around the 5th, the couple days leading up to, and the couple days, away from the 5th, we were feeling that. I definitely, like, this week was so emotionally challenging for me that I feel very much like that was accurate for me. I'd be curious if any of you kind of felt some of this tension starting out October. It doesn't help too that we're still kind of in an eclipse portal with that. So it's a lot. The start of October was very intense. Sunday the 6th, we have quite a few transits. So we're still under the influence of that Mercury square to Mars. And then the Sun in Libra is going to make an inconjunct to Saturn in Pisces. So we've got, kind of another challenging aspect. And, again, like, there's an opportunity with Piscean energy for creativity, artistic expression, and really leaning into those things. Pisces also rules escapism, drug addiction, alcoholism, fantasy, delusions, illusions. And so depending on where we're at in ourselves, these things can kind of manifest either in a positive way where we're really overcoming stuff and we're going deeper into the Piscean kind of, meditative, spiritual journey, spiritual quest. What does it all mean? Or we can go into this like totally delusional, escapist, I'm not going to deal with stuff kind of thing. And maybe we do a little bit of both, that could be something that's happening too. But the Sun in Libra wants us to kind of find balance in life. Saturn in Pisces wants us to explore the depths of our souls and what kind of gets us, feeling in tune with consciousness. So we've got a lot going on there. Let's see. The moon in the afternoon at 4:30 Pacific Standard Time on the 6th enters Sagittarius, and that kind of bumps up our desire for freedom and spontaneity. So the moon in Scorpio is a lot more of an intense, introverted kind of energy where we might feel like we need a lot of alone time or introspection. And then it kind of is like another kind of emotional rebirth when it moves into Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the sign of the seeker and really wants to explore and get out and kind of be free and, adventurous. And so, Monday the 7th, we actually are maybe feeling more in that space than, we were the days before. October the 8th, we have another pretty big day of transits. We've got Venus in Scorpio making a trine to Mars in Cancer. So trines, you'll read a lot of things that kind of make the impression that trines are positive or good. A grand trine in somebody's chart can be a really, blessed area of the chart, but trines themselves, it's just fast, easy moving energy. So Venus to Mars, fast, easy moving energy. It really depends on each individual person, what's happening in your chart with this transit. But essentially, this could be a really sexy energy. It could be also a really good energy for connecting emotionally and being confrontational about emotions. It could be a really good energy for art or creative projects. But it also could, Mars can be really volatile too. And so we can be emotionally reactive, more emotionally sensitive, especially in relationship dynamics. Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. And so, Venus being here with Mars as its ruler, it does maybe make us feel more sensitive and reactive in relationship dynamics. It's important for us to be vulnerable. It's important for us to learn how to process our feelings in more effective ways than just being reactive. So connecting to people on a deeper level is supported here, but it also could be through challenges. Mercury is going to be making a trine to Jupiter. So, talking about easy flowing energy. And Mercury is also opposite Chiron in Aries. So, if we think about Venus and Mars having this whole kind of energy while Mercury is having its, energy to Jupiter and Chiron, there is a lot of opportunity to communicate needs in relationship dynamics and relationship dynamics of all kinds. This could be at work, this could be with a coworker or a boss. If you've got something going on that is not working for you, that you feel like you need to, address and kind of hammer out. But this could definitely be in romantic partnerships. If you're feeling like there's, some kind of deeper issue that needs to be acknowledged or worked through, that's going to be coming up during this time as well. And then the rest of the day, the moon in Sagittarius is going to be aspecting, it's going to make an opposition to Jupiter, a trine to that Chiron, sextiling Mercury in conjunct Uranus, and squaring Neptune in Pisces. So it's a lot. Like Tuesday the 8th is a really intense day emotionally, energetically. We could be having a lot of intense conversations with someone about a dynamic that needs to shift or change. On October 9th, Jupiter is going to be stationing retrograde, and that is happening at 21 degrees of Gemini and is lasting until February, where it'll station direct on the 4th at 11 degrees. So 21 degrees all the way back to 11 degrees of Gemini. Think about kind of where Jupiter is transiting in your chart. Whatever house Jupiter is in, it's going to be influencing that area. So I think for me, Jupiter's in my 7th house of relationships right now. And so, think about kind of the things that I've been working through since then. Let's look back and see where Jupiter was at 11 degrees last. So it looks like Jupiter was at 11 degrees on July 14th. So think back to July 14th up until now on October 9th, and there might be some similar themes that come up for you over the next couple of months that, Jupiter is going to be having you grow and evolve. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It's all about growth and, growing beyond where we've been. So that's something to kind of consider as the rest of the year goes on. Wherever Jupiter is pushing you to grow beyond where you've been. The next thing that we have is the moon entering Capricorn on the 9th. And the moon is considered to be in detriment in Capricorn. And this is actually one of the placements of the moon that I actually kind of like. But the moon in Capricorn tends to be a little bit more rigid when it comes to feelings, a little bit more cut off. We might actually need a little bit of that after the last few days. So hopefully we can find some grounding and stability in terms of getting things done. My dog is being so cute right now. Oh, Cosmo. He's like, stop reading your books and pay attention to me. It's pretty cute. I just showed the screen on my end and realized you guys might not actually be able to see it because I can't remember if it shares. I don't think it does. Oh, well. My dog Cosmo is laying on my books, my astrology books, and it's very cute. Okay, so then let's move on to Thursday the 10th. We're almost getting caught up to today. We've got a first quarter moon happening in the first part of I guess it's happening. Let's see here. Yeah, it's happening in the morning on the 10th at 11:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. First quarter moons are a great time for planting seeds towards things that we want to grow. And this is metaphorically in our lives. And so think about where Capricorn is in your birth chart. This could be a good time to set intentions towards things that you want to manifest or call in over the coming weeks. The other big transit that we have going on is with Venus. Venus in Scorpio is making an inconjunct to Jupiter in Gemini and also to Chiron in Aries. So again, Venus, the planet of relationships in the fixed water sign of Scorpio, forcing us to really work on these deep issues in relationships that are within the subconscious, that might be hidden, desires, insecurities, all of that stuff is making these hard aspects to Jupiter and Chiron. So Jupiter and Gemini, we might be needing to expand or grow beyond where our perspective or ideas have been. Chiron and Aries has a lot to do with identity wounds and how we're relating to our sense of self. So those are themes that are coming up for you within your relationships and something that we're all kind of having to acknowledge. And, looking to where it is transiting in your personal birth chart will tell you kind of more what's happening on an individual level. Okay, so Friday, October 11th, this was yesterday. So we're getting pretty caught up. The moon is going to enter Aquarius at 9:31 a.m. And so we're going to, have most of the weekend with the moon in Aquarius. And the moon in Aquarius, so Aquarius is the fixed air sign of the zodiac that rules the 11th house. It can be a very community-oriented sign. It's the sign that has a lot to do with wanting to connect to friends, matters that are important to us when it comes to the world, like political kind of things. If you're not somebody that's super into politics, sometimes just connecting with people in your community about shared interests can be something that's of importance to you. But wherever the moon is transiting is kind of what we feel like we emotionally need in the moment. And so you can see where you have Aquarius in your birth chart, and that's where your emotional needs are also kind of being pulled towards. Moon in Aquarius is also considered to be more kind of like a detached energy emotionally. So maybe we need things to feel a little bit more light and airy and not as intense as, when the moon is in a sign like Scorpio or Cancer, or more of the emotional energies. So we might be feeling like we just need to go have some fun and not be so entrenched in our heavier stuff. Mercury in Libra is making a hard aspect to Uranus and Taurus. It's making it in conjunct. And so again, we might have, when Mercury and Uranus come together, we could have breakthroughs in terms of how we're perceiving something. We could be kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling a new way about this, or I'm thinking about things differently. It also can disrupt travel or technology. So this can also be another transit where it does feel kind of like Mercury's retrograde, where things just feel off, communication feels off, getting from point A to point B, computer issues, all of that kind of stuff. So Mercury making that aspect to Uranus can also be really frustrating. The other big transit that we have happening today is Pluto's actually stationing direct today. I don't think I realized that was happening this month. That's crazy. So Pluto will be stationing direct at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and this will be the last time Pluto is in Capricorn in our lifetime. It's crazy. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to today, the day I'm recording this video. So we've got on October 12th, we've got Jupiter making a sextile to Chiron in Aries. So Jupiter, that planet of expansion and growth, is making a sextile, which is considered to be harmonious to Chiron in Aries. So Chiron in astrology is called the wounded healer. We look at a Chiron transit as a wound that needs healing somewhere in our lives that, it's not simple. Like we don't go through Chiron transits in a short period of time. Chiron stays in a sign for a long time. It's a generational planetoid. So there's, generations that are marked by Chiron in certain years. And so people in Gen X are going through a Chiron return right now. And then we're all as a collective going through, lessons around Chiron. So Chiron has been in Aries for a handful of years now already. And it, makes different aspects to different things throughout those years. And, right now it's been aspecting the nodes. And, we had a lot of Aries energy at the beginning of the year that was hitting this Chiron with, that ecliptic line too. And so we have over the last year been in kind of this identity healing bubble. Jupiter here is kind of continuing that story in a way where Jupiter in Gemini has a lot to do with our perspectives on things. Gemini rules the third house, which is the house that has to do with how we think. Gemini is like, I think, essentially. So how do I think about things? How do I perceive things? It's also the sign of communication. So how do I communicate what I'm thinking? And when we're thinking about Aries rules the self and the identity. And we think about Gemini, it's kind of like how we're articulating or perceiving the identity when these two are coming together. Jupiter's helping us grow maybe beyond how we've been perceiving ourselves. So, we think about kind of like examples, I guess we could say, is when you're older and you look back at when you're younger and you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I was so naive. If only I'd known then what I know now, I would do things differently, all that kind of stuff. This transit's kind of here to help us have a point of reflection around who we are and what can we call in for our personal growth that helps us heal and expand beyond our sense of self and what we know. Um, I think for me, one of the things that is going on with this transit for me today, actually, if we think about it, because it's hitting right now, is I have a lot of stuff I've accumulated over the years that, it took me a long time to accumulate. Like I owned a house and I bought a lot of the stuff for my house. And when my life fell apart and I moved, I didn't really want to get rid of any of it because I had just gotten a lot of it in the last few years. And it just felt like such a waste to get rid of stuff that I had just got. But now that I've been, in this apartment for, I don't know how long it's been, since February, however long that's been, 8 months. The stuff that I have from my past is really making my mental health feel really negative. Everything from my past, if it's in my face right now, is hitting me in a really negative way. And I just want to get rid of everything. I'm like, I want to get rid of everything and I want it to match the new life that I have, like the new stuff that I get. I kind of did that with my clothing, and like I got rid of a bunch of old clothes that I just don't want to hold on to anymore. I got a bunch of new clothes this year, and it made a big difference. Like I feel good wearing stuff that is about me now versus anything that reminds me of my previous self. Even clothes that I like, I'm having a hard time wearing just because it reminds me of the past. And so, I'm personally very affected and impacted by my space and what's in it. I've always been that way. And so I think part of my identity stuff, it's like I like my space to reflect how I'm feeling inside. So having stuff that reminds me of the past in a negative way isn't really making me feel good in my space. And I could see this Jupiter, transit to Chiron. It's like in order for me to fully shed the old self, which is Aries self, in order for me to heal Chiron, I feel like I need to let go of the old stuff and bring in new stuff so that I can feel like I'm really moving forward, which is a very Jupiter kind of vibe. So that's an example of something I'm going through. It feels very much like like the fall cleaning, spring cleaning kind of needs to happen. We also today on the 12th have Mercury and Libra making it in conjunct to Neptune and Pisces. And when Mercury and Neptune are making an aspect to each other, which remember yesterday, Mercury and Uranus were an aspect to each other. And so these are, both hard aspects to more of the challenging, what are deemed the crisis planets. We definitely can have this sense of like everything around us is much worse than it actually is. It's hard to say that though, when there is a lot of things going on in the world right now that are very challenging. So it's an interesting thing to kind of say, like, what is actually challenging for me right now in this moment versus, things that are on my doorstep that I don't need to allow myself to be affected by right now so that I can move forward just today. And then also, what illusions or delusions am I telling myself that are not of service to me? So Neptune and Pisces has a lot to do with illusion. These are also very artistic placements. It's really good for writing, creative pursuits, turning those ideas or that pain into art is really supported with these transits. The rest of the day, the moon is going to be making aspects to the sun, Mars, Chiron, and Jupiter. All right, October 13th is another really big day of transits. We're going to have Mercury in Libra squaring Pluto in Capricorn at that 29th anaretic degree before Mercury enters Scorpio. So we might start out feeling, again, like Mercury. I mean, the last few days, Mercury's had some pretty intense transits. It hits Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all in a hard way. And those are the crisis planets. They do force us to do some really deep, heavy emotional work. And with Mercury, it has a lot to do with our mental state. So if you feel like your mental health has been challenged, it has. I'm not just projecting. I'm looking at these transits and I'm like, that's what it is. When I left the house today, there was just some really annoying energy going on around me. And I was like, I'm just going to stay home. I feel like everyone's on one today. And yeah, it does seem that way with the transits. Mercury is going to enter Scorpio. So I would prefer Mercury in Libra over Scorpio personally. Mercury is going to be in Scorpio for the rest of October. And while I like this energy for psychic work, channeling, all the witchy, ritual, underworld vibes, I'm all about it, connecting with the other side. This could also be really fun for sexy talk and, sexy times. It's also an energy that can be really reactive, very emotionally unstable in terms of how we're perceiving things, competitive, hurtful, harsh with language. These are all things that we need to be really mindful of as Mercury is in Scorpio for the rest of October. We also have the moon entering Pisces shortly after that. And so the moon and Mercury are going to be making a trine in water signs, which could have us feeling very emotional. We could feel like a lot of stuff in the past is coming up that we need to process, and we could just be feeling the weight of it. It could feel very, very heavy. This is also a really positive energy for creativity and art. It can also be a really challenging energy for those of us in recovery. So, this energy is it does have, like, if you're not doing well in your recovery or you're not doing well in your sobriety, this is a time when you need to lean on your support and get help. If you are struggling with alcoholism or drug addiction, this would be a time that you are more prone to wanting to lean into your addictions. And so again, call in your community, get support where you can. The Sober Curator has a ton of resources available. So that's something to just kind of be mindful of. With that said, too, we have some other really intense transits coming up this same day where Mars in Cancer is squaring Chiron in Aries. So again, identity wounds coming up, and us, we're just way more sensitive. We're way more emotionally reactive and sensitive during this time. The sun in Libra is opposite Chiron in Aries, and then also making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini. So the transits here, basically, to summarize kind of just the last couple of days this week, especially after this eclipse portal, it's really here to bring up some shit for all of us that's been, in that subconscious. And it hurts when this stuff happens. It feels really intense and really heavy, but it's an opportunity for us to heal and work through things in a way that could actually help us really move past and beyond where we've been. And that's the goal, right? Is healing, growth, changing our perspective, changing our mindset, getting us to a better place than where we were before. On October 14th, the sun is going to be squaring Mars. Venus is going to be opposite Uranus. So Venus in Scorpio opposite Uranus in Taurus. And then we've got some hard transits with the moon. The moon's going to make a conjunction to Saturn and a square to Jupiter. This is also considered to be Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. I at first was reading that differently. I was like, this is not Thanksgiving. I was like, oh, it says it's Thanksgiving Day in Canada. So it's not Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. So this day where we have the sun squaring Mars and Venus opposite Uranus could be really challenging for relationship dynamics, and we could be more reactive in our relationships. If you have been thinking about leaving a relationship, this might be the time where you feel like you're ready to do that. That's the Venus opposite Uranus. Uranus is the planet that represents change, and Venus is the planet that represents relationships. So we experience some sort of big change in a relationship dynamic. The sun represents energy, vitality, our sense of self, making a hard aspect to Mars and Cancer. Our emotions are running really high. We're just so much more reactive starting the week out on Monday. So that's just something to be mindful of. We also could feel really a need to take action towards change in some way. So if we've been feeling restless and like we just need to do stuff or do something, we could be feeling that too. On the 15th, the moon is going to be kind of center stage in Pisces, making a lot of aspects to things. We've got moon in Pisces squaring Jupiter in Gemini, trining Mars in Cancer, in conjunct Sun in Libra, sextiling Uranus in Taurus, trining Venus in Scorpio, conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and sextiling Pluto in Capricorn before it enters Aries in the afternoon. So it's just funny to me how much the moon's doing up until the afternoon. It's just like emotion, like the day before with those energies still in the hangover to Tuesday. Like we're just going to be emotional and we're going to be sensitive. And there's so much, we have agency on how we deal with that. Go to therapy, do it through art, process talk, whatever we need to do. Then the moon enters Aries, which is like kind of this ramp up of energy, you know, cardinal fire. It wants to get going, it wants to take action, but it's also very reactive. Anytime that the moon is in Aries, I say it's really good to go do something physical and get all of that heat and energy moving through your body. Get it out somewhere. Don't take it out on other people. Venus in Scorpio is going to be making a trine to Neptune and Pisces shortly after the moon enters Aries. And so we're also going to be kind of in this place where maybe the day before we had kind of more of this intense energy with, you know, that opposition to Uranus, and then with Venus making that trine to Neptune, we might be kind of rethinking our initial feelings and wondering if we reacted too heavily to something. Yeah, it's interesting. And what's fun about all of this is it's the lead up into our full moon in Aries on the 17th. So that's happening at 4:26 a.m. We have a full moon in Aries at 24 degrees Aries. And, you know, full moons are a time of releasing and letting go. So if we think about all the things that have happened in the 2 weeks prior to this that have kind of been getting us into this place of feeling ready to kind of release and purge an old identity and welcome a new one, this full moon is here in Aries, the sign of identity, is saying, let go of the things that are no longer serving your sense of self, because the new self is going to start taking form, you know, as the year comes to a close. Venus on this day is also making a sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. Venus transits to Pluto represent major changes in relationship dynamics. There's a death of how we used to behave or perceive relationships, and there's a new kind of form taking its place. The form hasn't taken its place yet because we're still kind of in the death of it all. But for Venus to be, you know, making this aspect to Pluto on the same day as the full moon in Aries, I think it really does have a lot to do with, you know, the I versus the you versus the we, and how all of that's working in our lives. Shortly after Venus makes that sextile to Pluto, because this is all happening at that anaretic degree of 29, Venus is going to enter Sagittarius. And Venus in Sagittarius, you know, wants freedom, adventure, wants to explore new terrain. So, you know, we've been in this Venus Scorpio bubble that's really reflective and very emotional and processing, you know, the past or desires or, you know, insecurities. And then once it enters Sagittarius, it's like, okay, I'm ready to just go out and play and learn and figure out something new. I think of the Daughter of Wands in the Mother Peace Tarot deck, where it's the woman dancing. It's also known as the Page of Wands, and she's exploring herself again. And Venus and Sagittarius can have that kind of energy, like I'm exploring myself and relationships in a new way. Shortly after that, the moon is going to enter Taurus, where it is exalted. The moon in Taurus is one of my favorite energies because we really do start to feel more grounded and more connected to the earth energy around us. On Friday the 18th, the sun is going to make an inconjunct to Uranus in Taurus. So again, this is like a big breakthrough energy, especially when it comes to our ideas of what's fair and our sense of self. With the moon in Taurus, it's going to be interesting because, you know, this might challenge our perspectives around what we value in terms of stability and how we think of stability. Saturday the 19th, we're going to have the moon in Taurus for most of the day in terms of the early hours. And then the moon is going to enter Gemini in the afternoon. Moon in Gemini can sometimes lend itself towards us feeling more of a desire to be social, communicative. We could be more on the anxiety side of things where we feel a little bit more dysregulated. It's good to kind of use that energy to be productive and connect with people, especially since it's going to be making an opposition to Venus and Sagittarius. We might feel a need to just get out and go do and be more in our yang kind of energy. October 20th, the sun is going to make it in conjunct Neptune and Pisces. This could be a really positive energy for creative projects. You know, we also are more delusional with this energy. We might feel confused about something. We might feel like we're working through sobriety in a new way. I bring up that because, you know, we're all about recovery here. Neptune, you know, is called the great dissolver. And so when we have aspects to Neptune, something is dissolving, some kind of structure or boundary. And the sun, again, is that identity and relationship to self. So there could be some identity or sense of self that we're having that is dissolving or you know, shifting or changing in some way for us. It's also a good day for meditation and spiritual practices when we have Neptune involved. On October 21st, the moon is going to be in Gemini pretty much most of the first half of the day, and then it's going to enter its home sign of Cancer. So we might feel productive for the first half of the Monday, the 21st, and then by the end of the day with the moon entering Cancer. Cancer is that cardinal water sign that rules the home and family sector, and so we might feel a need to pull all of our energy in and just kind of spend the later half of the day doing things that we find emotionally nurturing. The other transit that we're going to have in the evening on the 21st is Mercury in Scorpio, making a trine to Saturn in Pisces. Again, this energy is great for creative and artistic projects, music, art, poetry, all of that kind of stuff. But if we are not doing those things, it could also be a threat to sobriety if we're seeking escapism from reality in unhealthy ways. So lean on your programs if you need them. Tuesday, the 22nd, we officially enter Scorpio season. Happy birthday to all of the Scorpio babies. I am a huge fan of the sign Scorpio. I know that we've been talking about some of the hard parts of some of the Scorpio transits, but in terms of Scorpio as an archetype on its own, the elevated parts of it I really love. The connection to the underworld, the subconscious through death, death and rebirth, transformation, transmutation of energy. Burning away, you know, the old so that the new can be, you know, found, sex, the occult, hidden mysteries. This is also kind of where true crime and that kind of stuff lives in this area. And I am such a fan of all of that stuff. So, you know, Scorpio is the fixed water sign that rules those things. It has a pretty cool archetypal journey that I'm not going to tell the story of, but I might next month when we enter November, but you can Google kind of like the alchemical journey of Scorpio through the Scorpion, Eagle, and Phoenix, and it's really cool. So happy birthday, Scorpios. On the 23rd, the moon is still going to be in Cancer for the whole day until the evening, where it'll enter the fixed fire sign of Leo. And then on the 24th, we're actually going to have a last quarter moon at 1 degree Leo. So last quarter moons are a good time for releasing something. It's when the moon and the sun are making a square to each other. So again, Leo, you know, rules the relationship to creativity and self-expression. So if there's anything that you feel like has been stifling you or not allowing you to fully express yourself the way that you want, this last quarter moon could be a good time for you to kind of release anything that you feel like is in your way around creativity. On the 24th, we also have Mars in Cancer making a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. And this is an interesting energy in the sense that Cancer and Taurus are both really similar archetypes. They both really love feeling comfortable and stable, one emotionally and one more in the physical and material. And Uranus is the planet of change and destruction, and Mars is the planet of action and willpower. And so, you know, having these planets in these two signs is very like kind of contradictory to what the signs like. And so we might be feeling erratic or a lot of instability in these areas. What was once comfortable and made us feel at home, or we were able to lean into or onto, might not be there the way that it used to, and we're being required to have to shift or change our perspective around that and embrace change. And it's hard, you know, but the sextile wants it to be easy and wants there to be a nice flow into change. And so if there's things working out around the changes, just trust that it's, say to yourself, like the universe is always working in my favor. Those kind of little affirmations can make a big difference. Because even when the rug's getting pulled out from under you, or you're experiencing some major blow that you weren't anticipating, in the moment and in those months or weeks that the blow is happening or the change is happening, what gets put back in its place can sometimes be so much better than anything that you would have even known or dreamt was possible. And I do feel like I can attest to that as somebody that has been going through major amounts of change this year. While I'm still in grief mode over things in my past that I worked really hard towards and that I miss to an extent, and that, the love that I have for all of that stuff, like that grief is still very prominent. The things that have come into my life as a result of all of that change, I couldn't imagine not having at this point. The friendships, the relationship, the new dog that I have, like getting to live where I live right now, the memories, all the concerts and experiences and food and just travel and music, like everything that's come into my life wouldn't be here if it weren't for the catastrophic change that happened. So, if your life is kind of going through some upheaval and you feel like you don't know how to get it sorted, just as they say, let go and let God, or say let go and let Goddess, and allow the divine to work in your life, because you don't always know where you're. It might feel bad in the moment, but it might be better than where you were. So just try to hold on to that possibility. The 25th, we're going to have the moon in Leo making aspects to Saturn, Mercury, Chiron, and Jupiter. This is a great day for creativity and self-expression and finding new ways to express yourself. On October 26th, the moon is going to enter Virgo in the early morning hours for Pacific Standard Time, a little bit later in the day for Eastern Standard. But I love the moon in Virgo. I always feel so productive and like I just want to get a lot done. So October 26th could be a really productive day for you if you decide to lean into that energy. Mercury in Scorpio is going to make an inconjunct to Chiron in Aries. So we might also be dealing with some ego stuff, especially in communication dynamics. Like this is a day where you might need to eat some humble pie and find a way to kind of be more constructive with how you communicate. There's more tension around our identity and kind of how we're perceived as well. The 27th, we're going to continue to have that kind of influence of Mercury in conjunct Chiron, and then the moon in Virgo is going to be making a hard aspect to Venus and a hard aspect to Saturn. So we might also feel a little bit of instability in a relationship dynamic as well. On October 28th, we are going to have a pretty large day of moon transits. The moon in Virgo is going to be making a hard aspect to Chiron, Jupiter, Saturn, or no, sorry, not Saturn, Chiron, Jupiter, good aspect to Mercury, hard aspect to Neptune, okay aspect to Uranus, good aspect to Mars, and an okay aspect to Pluto. So it's a lot with the moon here. The moon represents our emotions and kind of what we're feeling inclined towards. So starting out Monday, the 28th, we might have a lot we need to get done. And there's so much energy here to support it, but also in a challenging way. So a lot going on there. The major transits we have on this day are Mars in Cancer, trining Neptune in Pisces, and Venus in Sagittarius, squaring Saturn in Pisces. So it could be a hard day for, I don't know, it's interesting. It's like moon in Virgo is so positive for thinking like a practical problem solver, but then it has all this energy coming at it that's not really helping. And then the Mars trying to Neptune and Venus square to Saturn is very challenging. It's challenging for sure. Challenging in relationship dynamics, challenging in how we're perceiving things. It's a lot. It's a lot on this day. On October 29th, the moon is going to be entering Libra. And then on the 30th, we have the moon in Libra for the whole day with Mercury and Scorpio opposite Uranus in Taurus. So again, these transits can sometimes feel a little bit like Mercury retrograde, where things are not quite going according to plan. Things from the subconscious could be brought up in a way where we feel very emotional. It can just be a very intense energy when it comes to communication, travel, and plans. And then on Halloween, also known as Samhain, October 31st, the last day of the month, the moon is going to enter Scorpio in the morning, which feels very appropriate for Halloween. So I like to see that. And then Mercury in Scorpio is going to be making a trine to Neptune in Pisces. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the transits for Halloween because I think that this is a really great time to play and be creative. It can also be very emotional and very heavy, depending on how we're doing. But I think that if we want to lean into the fun, creative aspects of Scorpio and Pisces, we can have a really fun day, that's supported in the world as being a day to kind of just embrace connecting to the other side in a happy way, dressing up, going out, doing things that kind of bring us into the death of the year in a more positive way, positive light. We also, at the beginning of this, the October 31st marks our ingress into the new moon in Scorpio that we have starting out November 1st. So that's something to kind of keep in mind too, is that we're actually going to be in the balsamic phase of the moon on the 31st, which is actually pretty powerful for Halloween. The veil is thin. It said that we're able to connect to the other side more directly on this day. And when we add a balsamic moon into the mix, it heightens all of that. So if you do any channeling or seances or connections to the other side, that energy is going to be very heightened and very elevated. Your dreams could be very enhanced during this time too. So journaling kind of what comes up for you could also be a fun way to kind of celebrate into November. All right, you guys, that is my synopsis or breakdown on October's astrology. I hope that it was helpful in any of your planning. I think it's kind of a little too late to get too in front of anything, as we only have a couple more weeks left of October when I'm posting this. But I enjoy posting these even if I'm late. I hope that you enjoy watching them. I'm going to try to get the majority of the horoscopes done this weekend, and I'm wishing you all the best of luck during a pretty emotionally intense October. All right, I will see you all next month.